Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back in this library tour, this seemingly endless library tour, but it's not endless. It is not endless, and it's going to be much shorter next year because this library tour is helping me to winnow books, which is just what I like when a library tour does. So we are doing the bookcases inside the fireplace now, and we're on the second bookcase. We did one whole shelf yesterday, and we're going to do it's not possible to do another whole shelf today because yesterday didn't have any double stacked books, and today does. So we'll do the double stacks, the outward stacks first, and then we'll move on to the books on the shelf. Or no, no, we won't. We'll do the double stack books first, and then we'll do the transverse books because there are books piled on top of books in the back shelf as well. Oh, this is a perfect example of why this thing needs a vicious culling. All right, so the first one is Mary Kay Andrews, the queen of summer beach reads. This is the High Tide Club, and it's very good. You can see the beach, the water, the crab, the tote bag. It's meant, it's very much marketed to be taken with you to the beach and just read as just luxuriate in it like a bubble bath. I thought it had a little more meat on its bones than that. I always do with this author. She writes very much those kinds of books, but she does them for, if you want to think, if you want to bring your brain to one of her books, you definitely can. And this is about a recluse, an old recluse who owns her own island and who summons a young lawyer to take what amounts to her autobiographical deposition. And in the course of that story, of her past, a whole bunch of interesting stories, secondary stories, are just flushed out of the grass. I thought it's absolutely wonderful. Mary Kay Andrews is always wonderful, and this one I liked more than most of hers, which is why I think the only reason why it's one of the only ones that I've actually kept. Let's see here. Okay, this was a gift from one of you. This is a terrific science fiction novel that I did not know about. I'd never heard about it. This is by David Bishop, and it is Fiends of the Eastern Front. It's a World War II novel, great big, wonderfully. You want it to be longer. It reminded me very much of Kim Newman's Anno Dracula series, because it infiltrates vampires into history and creates a subtly altered history. In this case, World War II, the German armies are rampaging across Europe, and they encounter a Romanian cohort of an armed Romanian division that never goes out during the day, and that leaves behind in its wake not only dead Russians, but dead Russians completely drained of blood. It's just terrific. Absolutely terrific. I wish that it were, I don't know that it's in print. It might not be. It's a gem that I completely missed. Okay, this is a lovely thing by Neil Griffiths, our very own, BookTube's very own Neil Griffiths. This is As a God Might Be. A big, thick novel of his about a man who decides in the middle of his life to build a church, and in both senses of the word, the building and also the congregation, and what that means to all the people around him and what it might mean to him. Very much, as you might, if you're familiar with Neil's channel, it's very much a novel of ideas, although the extent to which the characters are well drawn, the completely secular dialogue is well done, missed me the first time I read it. I had to reread it a couple of years later, to really get all that's going on here. I included in the book a Times Literary Supplement review by Jonathan Keats, and it deserved it. It deserved all that attention. It's an amazing work in a lot of ways. Certainly, I would say, it's tough to say, and of course it's not a competition, but I would certainly say that it is by far and away the most impressive thing that any booktuber's ever written. But I do recommend it. If you in scope, you've got three different things in a row here: Mary Kay Andrews, Fiends of the Eastern Front, and an intellectual novel. All right, and then it just goes on from there. This is all lots of fiction. There's lots of fiction here. This is a Cape Cod novel. This is Elizabeth Kelly's Last Summer of the Camperdowns. Here you see the sky and the beach and the waves and the dune grass and a basset hound. And this is also, I mean, it's a question of marketing completely, but this is also beach fiction about an extremely charismatic family and the uncovering of a crime, all that sort of stuff that doesn't happen in real life. Really well done. Really, really well done. Okay, this is N. John Hall's novel Bibliophilia. really well-made paperback that I just got it out of the blue. I didn't request it. I didn't know it existed. And it's from years ago. It's from 2016, I think. Yeah, 2016. And it's the story of, well, it starts off being the story of a neophyte who tries to enter the world of rare book collecting, which is a snake pit on its own, and the author does a great job of easing the reader into that world. It starts off as that, but it becomes much more than that. It becomes much more of a, I don't know, it's much closer to As a God Might Be in terms of being an intellectual novel. It becomes much more of a meditation on authenticity, on identity. I liked it very much. I want to bridle strongly against one of the quieter implications of the book, reflected in the title of the book, which is that world is bibliophilia. It is not. You can love books without caring about a rare edition of Rebecca West that has page 164 printed upside down or something like that. You can care about books quite a bit without ever touching that world. The fact that this main character decides to show that he cares about books by entering that world is purely an idiosyncratic decision. It is not. You can love your books, just as they are. You can love your books. Okay, all right. Not sure why I have this. This is a movie version of James Dashner's novel *The Maze Runner*, which has the movie artwork. There is Dylan O'Brien. Hilarious to me that Dylan O'Brien was. There's the whole cast. I thought it was hilarious that the whole thing is about running when Dylan O'Brien can't physically do that. And if you watch the movie and see how the jump cuts are made, you'll see that what looks like prolonged exertion is actually CGI or clever camera work, because he's a roasting tobacco addict. So he that's the price you pay. That's the coin you give up, is your lung capacity. I really like the movies, though. Do you? Do you really like the movies? I think they're, of course, better than the books. But am I the only one here that likes the Maze Runner movies? I'd love to know. Okay, this little thing is Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. Tiny little novel. Also very much a novel of ideas that I liked, but not well enough to keep it. Don't know what it's doing here. Okay, this is Emily Neville's It's Like This Cat. We've already seen that just in this tour. See, this was the original cover, and this is one of the many subsequent covers. And the fact that I can hold up two covers for you is a perfect indication of how this whole bookcase needs culling. I like It's Like This Cat. It's a great YA novel, but I don't need two copies of it. I don't. Okay, all right. This is Indignation by Philip Roth. This is a booktube buy, believe it or not. I don't like Philip Roth. I never have. Roth, Updike, Mailer. I never liked any of them. They are all penis-obsessed frauds, and time will prove me right. Time will prove me right about all of them. The question of whether or not they have any kind of permanent literary value can only be answered in one way, and that's by time. Now, I could be wrong in the long term. I know I won't be wrong in the short term. In the short term, these authors' works will disappear, and began disappearing the minute they disappeared. The minute they were no longer around to do, to do press and talk about themselves at their favorite literary venues. The minute Vonnegut and Updike and Roth and Mailer, and the minute these people aren't around to keep pumping gas into their personal reputation, their works will disappear. And that has started to happen and will continue to happen. The long term, you never know. If I'd been making the same claim about Herman Melville right after he died, the long term would have proven me wrong. So it may be that there will be a revival of these wretchedly unimaginative authors, but I hope not. And the reason Indignation is a booktube buy is because the first time I expressed that opinion on booktube, there were quite a few people in the comments field and in emails who were flat out astonished. It was almost like they didn't understand the words coming out of my mouth. I had one person sort of signaled all the rest by writing and saying, "You're a self-evidently well-read person. You have to like Philip Roth. No, I don't. There are no rules. No, I don't. I don't have to like him at all. There are no purity tests here. There is no virtue signaling at all. I have to like what I like on the page. And it's not just that I don't like Philip Roth because I had another theory was I had some weird bad experience with him or something like that. I'm a critic. I don't tailor my reactions to books by whether or not the author stiffed me for a cab in Manhattan in 1972. I go by what's on the page, and by that same token, when I tell you that Philip Roth or John Updike are terrible, I can demonstrate it on the page. It's not a pronouncement. You don't have to take my word for it. If we were to go through it, I would not only show how the prose on the page is bad, but I would also show how you are moving the goalposts in order to call it good, when you don't call the exact same level of bad in other writers good. In other words, you're buying into a reputation. You're jumping on a bandwagon. It's an old phenomenon, and it's easy to spot. All you have to do is take the name off the work, jumble it up, and shove it underneath your nose and see what your reaction is. I guarantee you, your reaction to even what his critics have called his best passages, the best passages of Philip Roth, I guarantee you, if you didn't know it was him writing them, you would not have the opinion that you have when you do know it's him writing him, and that means it's not the prose that's doing it for you. It's an uphill battle, I admit. My best human friend is a foremost defender of Philip Roth, rather famously. But nevertheless, I'm right, and time will prove me right. Okay, this next one is from Europa Editions. This is Richard Francis. This is Crane Pond, a novel of the Salem witch trials that is tremendously good. Just tremendous, a tremendous historical novel. Okay, this is M. Henderson Ellis, Keeping Bedlam at Bay in the Prague Cafe. This is from 2013, a hilarious novel with a very much, those of you who know the Confederacy of Dunces, Ignatius Riley, the main character in Confederacy of Dunces, is this over-the-top crazy person who is nevertheless our protagonist and fun to read about, and this book has one of those to beat the band. A character this is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. A character who gets fired from a big chain, Starbucks-like coffee chain, one of a million fires that day, something that none of his superiors or the company itself thought anything about, and the whole novel spirals out from there. I loved it, and I don't know off the top of my head if I've ever read anything else by the same author. I'll check and see, because I wouldn't want to miss that. Okay, this is David Malouf. This is An Imaginary Life. This is his thin, almost surrealistic novel about the life of the Roman poet Ovid in exile. I thought it was very, very good. It had its weak spots, but I thought it was very good. I've tried really hard over the years to like David Malouf. He always seems to have the best of intentions, unlike the great literary lions that I talked about. He seems to have the best of literary intentions, but usually his execution just leaves me flat. And I will admit, the execution of this book is the weakest thing about it, but I liked a lot of the ideas. Which, just from the sound of that, is a perfect example of how I should not keep this book. I should not have a copy of it. It's physically here, taking up space on the shelf, when that's the most I can say about it. Anyway, now we've got some mass markets. This is a mass market of Anna Karenina that I found up in Vermont, I believe. David Murphy is doing a read-along in July of Anna Karenina. Did not invite me to participate. Does not care whether or not I participate. Does not like me. Because he hates me. Because I smell. Then there's War and Peace. This is the great Rosemary Edmonds translation for Penguin Classics of War and Peace. This, of course, does not belong out here. It belongs in with the Penguin Classics. I'm hoping that if David Murphy essays a read-along of War and Peace, or if anyone else on BookTube does, that they'll invite me. That'd be nice. Okay, this is an old paperback of the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, and the reason that it has that cover is because once upon a time, it might still happen, but once upon a time, neighborhood 5 and dime stores or whatnot you have to, with mass market paperbacks, you have to strip the cover off and send it back as proof of receipt to get your return. on unsold copies. But that's it. You don't have to send the books back. You don't have to stuff all the books back in a box and mail them. You just have to send the covers. That immediately led the proprietors of various five and dime and convenience stores and whatnot to think, well, I still have the book. What if I sell it? What if I sell the stripped copy for 50 cents or whatever? And I found this, I'm sure, in one of those stores and thought, well, okay, I don't really know what's going on here, but this is a paperback for 50 cents or 25 cents or whatever. It was only later that I realized that is unethical, and you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't sell it, and you shouldn't buy it. But when I got it home, I had to make a cover for it, so I did that. But I now have this. The reason that I now have the exact counterpart of this in hardcover with a dust jacket, so I don't need to keep the paperback. Okay, this is the Oxford World Classics of Phineas Redux. We did a read along of this on this channel. This is Paradise Postponed by John Mortimer, the author of the Rumpole of the Bailey series. This is not a Rumpole novel. It is still a comic novel, but in a much better, broader, deeper way about the two heirs of an Anglican clergyman and what they make of modern England. I think this is a classic. Rumpole is a classic in its way, of course. He's an immortal character. That's no easy thing to do. But I think this is a classic of English literature that is just largely overlooked. Mortimer was a horrible person. He was a horrible person. And I think most people are content when they think about him. I think they're just content saying, oh yeah, John Mortimer, Rumpole. But his memoirs are really good. His later non-Rumpole novels are really good, and this is brilliant. I'll have to send a copy to Wilson Shugart and see what he makes of it, since he is all three of the characters in it. Okay, this next one is Indie Press. This is terrific Roman historical fiction. This is the Other Alexander trilogy. The first one is The Bow of Heaven. The second one is A Mixture of Madness, and the third one is Blood of Eagles. The first one has that for a cover, less said the better. But then the other two, look really good and are much bigger. And these are terrific. They're by Andrew Levkoff, and they are amazingly good. They're about a young man named Alexander, who becomes the slave and assistant to Crassus, to the Roman plutocrat and ill-fated general Crassus. And they're amazing. They're just amazingly done. In addition to everything else that they do right, all the historical fiction stuff that you want to see, all the submersion in the details, and they're also whip sharp in dialogue. The dialogue is the best thing about the books, and they come that close. By the third book, especially by the ending of the third book, I was that close to actually feeling sympathetic for Marcus Crassus, which was unthinkable before I started that trilogy. I championed it. I reviewed every volume. I love it. I strongly advise you to go and get them. They are wonderful. I'll try to remember to note my review down below, but this is the Other Alexander trilogy. The Bow of Heaven is book 1 by Andrew Levkoff. Strongly recommend. It'll be Roman historical fiction that you probably haven't heard of. It's the dilemma that we've talked about on this channel. What do you do with the indie press? It's booming like nobody's business. There are thousands and thousands of new authors every year. It stands to reason, just by mathematics alone, they can't all be bad. It stands to reason that in that vast crowd that no one can keep track of, there are probably great books that we're all missing. And that's a perfect example of it. You're never going to see it on a bookstore table, and that means there's nothing that's going to push it to your awareness. I'll do my best. All right, this is an Oxford World Classic of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. No idea why I have an Oxford World Classics of the War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Okay, the next one is the Second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever by Stephen R. Donaldson. This is The Wounded Lamb, The One Tree, and The White Gold Wielder with the old Darrell K. Sweet covers. This is part of an epic read-along that I'm doing with a bunch of booktubers. We're reading one Thomas Covenant novel every month from July until December. And a couple of people have pointed out on this channel that there's actually a third trilogy. And I didn't want to be a snot in my response to those comments and say, something along the lines of, I blotted it out because the less remembered about it, the better. I don't think I'm alone among Thomas Covenant fans in saying that third trilogy is bad or forgotten. it contains none of the, no pun intended, magic of the first two trilogies. Unless maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I need to go back and reread that third trilogy. I read it the first time, of course. I pounced on it eagerly, as any Thomas Covenant fan would have, and it seemed to me to be all of the bad parts, all of the author's bad habits of the first two trilogies. Drastically, comically, hysterically overblown vocabulary, a tendency for superheated purple prose, but with none of the good stuff, with none of the raw invention, none of the great character moments. None of that seemed to be there to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should go back and look at that trilogy again. But for BookTube, we're not doing that trilogy. We're stopping in December. Okay, more Stephen R. Donaldson. I got this is Morden's Need. I got The Mirror of Her Dreams, book 1 of a duology of Morden's Need, and one of you sent me A Man Rides Through. This is a 2-part story about a fantasy world in which mirrors are magic that I want to reread now that I have both mass markets. They're huge books when they're in hardcover. I don't need them taking up that much space in hardcover. I know I don't like the duology enough for that, but I need to reread it now, so I will do that now that I have them both. Okay, this is a Star Trek novel by Judith and Gar Reeves-Stevens. This is Federation. A great Star Trek novel, one of, maybe the 5 or 6 truly great Star Trek novels. This one turns on the killer gimmick of Captain Kirk and Captain Picard somehow meeting, but its real glory is the way that it dramatizes the history of the Federation, including lots of events that we've heard about in Star Trek episodes. We've heard about Colonel Green or World War III or Khan Noonien Singh, but now we get to see them. And that was awesome. Okay, this is by Rob Thurman. This is one of his urban vampire novels. This one appears not to be with all the others. I have them all, and this one is just separate from them. That guy in red is the main character in this is Cal Leandros, but that is his best beau, Nico, and Nico steals the series. So it's no surprise to me that this cover artist is always one of my favorites. I really like him. What is his name? I always forget his name. No, and this isn't telling me. Maybe this volume actually was from like 2006 or something like 2007. Maybe this was just too early. He's gone on to become famous, so maybe this was too early for them to bother to name him. But he did all the covers for the Cal Leandros novels. Look at all this junk just sitting in here. Okay, here we're almost done. Don't worry. We have 2 copies of S.M. Sterling's Dies the Fire in mass market paperback. This is an absolutely terrific novel. I mean, the series has gone on. It's still ongoing. The series is really good, but the first novel you gotta read. You just gotta read it. You're gonna love it. Where a sudden flash all over the world, presumably, destroys all technology, stops it from working. So, chemical reactions, nuclear reactions, any kind of electronics, even gunpowder, stops working. Planes fall out of the sky, civilization falls apart, cities burn. And the book focuses on a small group of people in the Pacific Northwest who are able to ride it out. They're able to survive by wits and tenacity and whatnot. And it's just terrific. It's just an amazing, amazing book. The rest of the series that goes on, it has high and low points, but the first book, wonderful reading. Okay, this is David Farland's Rune Lords, high fantasy of his, with a Dow K Sweet cover that I found, I think, up in Vermont. And I bought it with the intent to reread it. I read it when it first came out in the aughts. How did this come out in the aughts? 1998, coming in the 90s. I read it then and liked it, and had not read it since. And then I saw this, and I thought, oh well, it's cheap, so I'll grab it. I grabbed it with the intent to reread it, and I have not reread it yet, but I will. I will. And then we'll finish up with more fantasy. This is Imager by Ellie Modasit. This is the first book in what turned out to be a very much ongoing series. I just recently read the latest volume in this series, which I think was the last one. I think it's the concluding volume. And that made me want to go and read the first one. So I looked on my science fiction fantasy shelves, which is what we're entering into. That's why you're noticing so much science fiction and fantasy. We're entering into a place that's not quite random. I went to those shelves to find my copy of Imager from when it first came out, and I couldn't find it, of course. It had not survived a million purges between now and then. So I went to Barnes & Noble to buy a mass market copy of Imager. Figure, you know, it's not that much of an inconvenience. I can't ask the publisher to send me a mass market copy of the first book in a 20-year-old series. So I went to Barnes & Noble to buy Imager, and the mass market paperback is $10. I remember staring at it. I didn't even think. I thought it'd be $6 something till I got to the register. And I saw it rung up, and I thought, when did that happen? I might even have said that out loud. When did that happen? When did mass market paperbacks become $10? It's a wonder that anybody ever buys any books if books are that expensive. Anyway, so that's it. That is those are the blocking books for this second shelf on this second bookcase. Now, next time, we're going to have to do the transverse books because I can't even get at the books that are underneath them. We're going to have to do the transverse books first, and then the rest of the shelf. Boy, oh boy, does this need redoing. But this is helping with that. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, Book 2.